This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and my guest, Lee Papa. Hello, Lee.
Hi, Heather. I'm happy to be here.
It is wonderful to have you here. This is part 2, by the way, for those of you listening, and I'll have a link to part 1 in the description, but you can also stay here because we've got a lot of great things we're going to talk about right now and some of the insights, some of the wisdom that Lee picked up. And we were just talking a bit about things in our life and how we can sometimes attract things into our life that we don't necessarily want, as well as kind of changing our thoughts and attracting better things. So, Lee, can you touch on that a bit more?
Sure. A lot of people want to move towards manifestation, right? They want to attract the things that they want. And I lean more towards looking at what is being attracted to your life. So when we are attracting things that are less than optimal, we are, and if it happens to perpetuate over time, we're not learning the lesson. When we are 0 to 7 years old, our brains are in theta state. Theta state is hypnosis. And so everything that we are experiencing from the womb to 7 years old, we're taking it in like a computer, right? We're laying down the neuro patterns. And then as we get older and we're moving into school and to relationships and things like that, basically we're taking all that information and we're repatterning it over and over and over again. So when we see that we are attracting things that we don't want, what do we typically do? We push against it. We're like, no, I don't want that, right? Well, what we resist persists. So if we're just pushing against it, we're just going to keep getting more of it. So the kind of the game of life is to be in that awareness of what is going on around you, taking full responsibility, not coming from a place of victimization, but to see what is coming at us and then taking the time to mindfully explore what it is that it is teaching us. Is it a pattern? So if you are, let's say it's anger and you have these triggers and you're going through all of this and everyone's doing things to you and you're mad at the person, at the car wash, and this person, your husband is triggering you, or your children are annoying you, whatever it is, that we have to look at where the core of the pattern is. That's why we go back to childhood until 7 years old. What was the pattern that was being laid out? And not in a place of blaming anyone, just saying, this is what is being laid out. That's why I love the non-judgment aspect of mindfulness, because we're not blaming anyone. We're not blaming ourselves. But we're looking at what the foundation is so that we can shift those patterns. And then once we get to being able to shift the pattern that is attracting the things that we don't want, then we can move to deliberately creating the life that you desire through intentional creation, through keeping your vibration at a place that is going to bring in that energy, and also living the life that you want to attract. In other words, if I just joked about this the other day with a client, the Tom Cruise movie back in the day, I don't even know when that was, where he says, "You complete me," with
Right.
Renee Zellweger. I'm like, that did such a disservice to humanity and relationships, because we are not filling a void. We need to do the work within ourselves to be full and whole. But often we feel this void within ourselves. And really that void is just our separation, what our perceived separation from God is. And so we fill it with all kinds of things, addictions and relationships that don't serve. And we're trying to fill this feeling of lack within us. So when we've done the work within ourselves to heal those past patterns and to be full, and that comes from, there's a free book on my website, The Roadmap to Living Mindfully, Understanding Self-Love, Self-Care, and Self-Mastery. We fill the void first with self-love and self-care. And when we can really work on that space, really falling in love with ourselves, being our own best friends, then we can then go out in the world really and be that for other people. We nourish ourselves mindfully, and then we give from the overflow. We can't possibly give from a place of lack, because we'll deplete ourselves and we won't really attract what it is that we want to attract. So I just say, keep moving forward, keep doing the self-care, keep reading, keep listening to podcasts. Something is going to be an aha moment for you that is going to move you to the next step. It's like, breadcrumbs that you're following. So, I mean, and I'm a case in point. Prior to the near death experience, I was drama driven. I was not. I was in a space of a lot of chaos, and felt like I needed to control things. I certainly had no peace. I had the monkey mind constantly, and I tried to meditate, and there was no way that was going to happen. That's what I said, right? Because I can't quiet the mind. But each step of the way led me a little further, a little further, a little more awareness, a little more peace. And then that led me to where I am today. I look back at the younger version of myself with such compassion, because it was exhausting being her. But I'm grateful for it, because I was able to move through all those processes. So getting back to the question, and that is, just keep showing up for yourself with the self-love and the self-care, and the things that you are meant to see will present themselves. The guidance will present themselves.
But I think what the question is that people are saying, well, it's not going to help because they don't think that they brought it on themselves. And I guess they're not really buying into that we're attracting things into our lives.
It's not their time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you believe in reincarnation, there's a reason for many, many lifetimes. And this lifetime may not be the one where they're going to explore that part of themselves. And so not everybody has to jump on board this particular train. They're having other experiences, and that's what their blueprint was for this lifetime.
And could that also explain why something happens to somebody when they're young? Because maybe it's some sort of a carryover from another lifetime?
And choice. I know it's not going to be a popular answer,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're on the other side and you want to have contrast, I use this little parable. So you're in heaven, and it's 24-hour bliss. It's like that multi-million-dollar view that is extraordinary when you first get it. And then over time, not so much, right? It loses its shine because it's just extraordinary, but you stop seeing it. And so 24-hour bliss all the time. You're like, oh, well, this is amazing. This is great. One with God. It's extraordinary. But I have not explored forgiveness. So I'm thinking I'm going to go back down and I'm going to explore forgiveness. Or I haven't explored surrender, to being 100% dependent on someone else. I mean, think about pets, right? Wow, what a soul's journey that is, to be 100% dependent on someone else caring for them, right?
Although my cats have it pretty good.
Yeah.
But no, there's a lot that are suffering out there as well.
Yes.
And I think you make a good point, because I think that's very valid that we would choose challenges to help ourselves grow. And I can relate to somebody saying, I would never choose this, because I hear that a lot too. And there have been times in my life that I could have said the same thing. I would have never chosen this. And yet once you get past it, you can go, okay, yeah, that was hard, but look what I learned. And I would not be this person I am today if I hadn't gone through that struggle. But it is really hard to understand that we're in the midst of that struggle.
Absolutely it is. And I've had a lifetime of many obstacles and struggles that that put me on my knees of despair many times. But like you said, it has brought me where I am. I don't want to do it again. I don't want to have that experience, but I am grateful. And there are many people that have come through cancer that have said the same thing. I mean, people have written books about it, that cancer was the best thing that ever happened to them because they healed an emotional aspect of them, or they started to appreciate life fully. There, and it's hard. There's so much suffering in the world
Mm-hmm.
that to hear this kind of dialogue when you are in the depths and despair of that kind of suffering, I can see how the resistance would be there. And
Absolutely.
so I do want to state this is not a lack of compassion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is just a perspective.
When you were with the two beings, they said something to you about your son has had other lifetimes where he lost his mother. And so, I mean, did they directly tell you basically that there's reincarnation?
Well, it would appear so, right? Without saying, Lee, jot this down, there's reincarnation. But it certainly, that's exactly what they were saying. And then there was an experience with him as he was a little older, but still young, um, where we were making, it was a Thanksgiving day, and we were making breakfast, and he was on a chair, and I was teaching him about respecting the stove, and being very careful. I was a helicopter mom. I'll just tell you, this was not like a mother that was not paying attention, extreme helicopter mom. And he burned himself, and he was crying. I was holding him. I was putting lavender essential oils on his. He burned his hand, and I was shaking. Uh, rocking him, and holding him, and he was said, "I want my mommy. I want my mommy." And I said, "I'm right here, honey. I'm right here." And he said, "No, my other mommy." And I went, and it took me right back to a reincarnation, right? So apparently he was still young enough to remember a previous lifetime. And I said, and this is what I know the depth of love for this child. If I could manifest this other mother for you at this moment, I would. But this is who you have now. And but I thought, wow, okay. And I know a lot of children still have what I would call bleed through experiences from previous lives, that happen usually before they go to school, because then it's kind of programmed out of them, right? But so I would say yes, there is reincarnation from my perspective.
Another thing from your near death experience is that you were shown the pain that your son would endure if you didn't come back. And I know there are people out there, because this is exactly what I would ask if I were in their shoes. Why didn't my loved one know my pain? Why didn't they choose to come back for me? So that's a hard thing for you to answer, I'm sure, but do you have any insight into that?
It's a great question, and it's a hard one to answer. I would say that these beings had me feel the feeling to bring me back was more about my experience than his experience. Meaning, it was very important for him to continue his life path and whatever his purpose is going to be, and that they used my empathic nature to be the trigger to come back, even though there was no attachment in that experience. They gifted me with that experience, if that makes sense. They gifted me with the feeling so that it pushed me over the edge to make that decision. Where Why didn't someone else's loved one come back? Because it wasn't necessary. It's kind of a,
Well, maybe they weren't shown that. Maybe they were never shown the pain the other person would endure because maybe it was meant that they were supposed to go back at that time.
right. And the thing is, because on the other side, there is no attachment, we don't feel the same way on the other side as we feel here. So there is no woulda, coulda, shoulda. There is no um, pain. There is no judgment. So the fact that they had me feel the pain for him was more about getting me to go back than for his experience. I'm not sure I'm articulating that well, but
You are.
the only thing that I can give you is from my experience, that we have the free will, and if someone chooses not to go back, it is not a reflection on that they weren't loved enough, because there is only love. So the love is beyond what you could ever imagine on this plane. So you're loved enough. It's just that it's not part of your journey that they come back as well.
There are so many dualities when it comes to near-death experiences and really the heavenly experience. And so I hear a couple of things. You talk about that there's not the attachment when they're over there. And yet I also often hear people say that our loved ones are always with us. So is it one or the other, or is it more that a little bit of both?
I believe that our loved ones are with us whenever we want them to be, and sometimes when we don't. I think that they come, um, and that they're more present at certain times. Like, I feel my mom around certain times more strongly than others. I've worked with mediums, and I've done mediumship work, even though I don't kind of advertise that, but sometimes that happens just when I'm working with someone. Um, and the clarity that came from being able to communicate with my mother from the other side. And my mother was a very religious woman, and yet, like, I don't want to give away the really kind of yummy part of that book where we had that communication, um, but knowing that she gave me the confirmations of what I knew to be true from my own experience, um, really was just like an exclamation point, was just a really great strengthening of that foundation of knowledge that, yes, our loved ones can communicate with us. And I believe that we just have this amnesia here purposefully so that we can have the experience of contrast. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it, right? Um, did that answer that question?
It absolutely did. The other thing that people are concerned about when they lose a loved one is they just worry, are they okay? And I think that's something that you can maybe reassure them, having seen, even if it was just the lobby or just the train station. I think you still probably had a pretty good idea of what they're experiencing.
Absolutely, they're okay. They're better than okay. And just like, I mean, they're just so much better. So I was explaining to you about my ex-husband had this surgery just this week, and there was a complication, and we weren't sure if he was coming back. And he ended up becoming conscious and coming back, and he said something like, "Oh, I'm lucky I'm back." And I said, "Or are you?" Because this is the hard stuff. This is the challenge. This is the darkness. This is the contrast. The other side is not. The other side is love and fulfillment and joy. And we don't have all that duality contrast. And so, yes, they're doing amazing. And don't worry about them. That's why I love the religions that really send, or the spiritual systems that send their loved ones when they transition off with a party. And I've said this to my son. I'm like, the deal. I'm like, no sadness. No, I mean, yes, I'm like, shed a tear. I want to see it, right? I'm going to count those tears, but as a joke. But I want him to celebrate all the really great things that we experienced together and celebrate my graduation of leaving the vessel behind and expanding, because we are so powerful. We're so expansive. We are in everything. We are just beyond what we could ever imagine is our expansive beingness, the vibration, the love, and capability.
Does that kind of go along with what people say that it is so much more real when they have these experiences than our lives here on earth?
Absolutely. I've said that too. That experience is more real than anything that I've ever experienced. And I'm also intrigued with the idea of this being the Matrix, or a hologram, or and that that science actually will discuss that and have proof that this is not a physical real experience. And that blows my mind, and yet I kind of dip my toe in it every once in a while, because I'm like, there's some truth in there. I want to explore that. But we explore the things when we're ready. Here's another one, like A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles are you familiar with A Course in Miracles?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Okay. So it is a beautiful and very intense study of directly from Jesus, channeled by a particular individual. I can't remember her name at the moment, but this has been out for quite a long time. It was brought to me post near-death experience, and during the time that I had the wellness center, so maybe 15 years ago, and I did not resonate with it at all. It was brought to me again, did not resonate with it at all. Bought the book, never picked it up. So only now, when I was introduced through another book, that I went, oh, wow, this is next level. This is next level understanding and awareness. And every page is so intense. The book that I'm speaking of is called The Disappearance of the Universe, or The Disappearing Universe. And it's fantastic. So that speaks to what we were saying about the illusionary part of our world. And I'll leave it at that. People can explore if it resonates with them.
Well, and it's interesting what you said, because I will say that I've looked at A Course in Miracles, and like you, I've picked it up a couple of times, and it's really challenging. And I've never gotten past a page or two because it was just, it's hard to grasp. And maybe it just shows when you're ready for it, then you get a much better understanding of it.
And I was, like you said, I was the same way. So I think that this book by Gary Renard, Disappearance of the Universe, is a great intro, even though, it's a thick book, but it's more easily digestible, and it helps you to then go, oh yeah, I want to go to the next step.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, check it out.
Now, when you were sent back, you said that you would do the work of the light. And I was curious, was that a requirement or was that more of a choice on your part?
I thought it was a choice, but it was really part of the deal. And so when I came back, I was the people will call them gifts. I believe we all have these abilities, but other senses were heightened post near-death experience, and communications and healings and um, extrasensory and psychic ability and things like that. And so I came back with these abilities and gifts, if you will, and a communication that guided me each step of the way. And it was pretty amazing. I opened up a wellness center. I started with 2 rooms. I was doing Reiki energy work. Then that expanded, and we started with 2 rooms, then 4, 6, 12, 13 rooms in an executive suite. Then that expanded into 6,000 square feet in contiguous space that included a cafe and retail space and more entertainment or conference space. We had up to 30 practitioners at that time. So that was the work that I knew that I was supposed to do. And yet it was challenging. It wasn't like it was a moneymaker. It was miraculous. Um, it was all consuming, but extraordinary. Uh, I can't say enough about it. It was called Ganesha Center, and it was a beautiful, beautiful time. But as that expanded, and over 6 years, we did over 4,000 classes, and tens of thousands of people came through there. We had amazing volunteers and people supporting the center, and it was just extraordinary. And it was we had our opening of the large space. We had our opening on 11/11/11, and miraculous things happened to be able to make that come to fruition. And then I started hearing go global, and I was like, go global. How do I open these centers when I can barely keep the lights on in this one, right? And so I kept exploring. Oh, well, maybe we're supposed to get investors, or maybe there's some other thing. So the third dimension of mind goes into high gear, where if we would just allow spirit to bring us what we're supposed to know, it's much easier. And so in time, things started to shift, and I wasn't getting the message. So I was kicking up some drama even then, just in the frenzy of trying to figure out, go global. And then out of the blue, I get a phone call from a lovely woman who was representing the largest meeting planners conference that happens to be in Las Vegas. It's an international meeting planners conference, 14,000 people. And they were referred to me as someone that was a wellness expert in the area. And would you be willing to come and speak at this conference? Which I said yes. And then when I did that, I knew immediately this is what global meant. And so closed the center and reframed additional guidance, said to reframe the work to mindfulness. So I created How to Live and Lead Mindfully as my keynote, and created something called the Mindfulness Lounge, which is a meditation space where I guide people through stress relief and meditation in the meetings and events industry. And I've been doing that since 2014, 15. And so that's the work of the light. And I continue to do what I am guided to, whether it's through books. So even the book, because I kind of kept those worlds separate. There was the near-death experience world, and then there was the stress relief and mindfulness, more grounded approach. And when my son went off to college and I did a little stint in the Southern Ozarks, I was like, okay, I can't do this work anymore. I'm going to go get a regular job, right? And Spirit was not having it. So I got blocked at every turn. And then Spirit said, you relaunch the book. And then as soon as that started coming together, because people come in, they call you, they email, things just fall into place when you are on path. And now it was time to integrate the two worlds. So we are in an extraordinary time in our history, and we are all here on the planet at this time very purposefully as we are moving. I think you can all feel it, right? You can feel this energy that is being created. It's like we're birthing something new, whether you call it the age of Aquarius or, however you frame it. We are moving into an extraordinary time, and we're just moving through the birth canal of that. And that's why there's a lot of stress and drama and trauma in the world. But my belief, and I hold my intention, that we are moving quickly to an awakened state for the planet. And there's enough of this contrast. I think we've had enough.
I sure hope you're right. I really would like to see, I guess, people coming together, being more loving, being more kind, and totally okay if we have different ideas on things,
Yes.
but just be more accepting and loving toward each other.
Yes, because we're not all here to have the same experience.
No, yeah.
How boring that would be.
Wouldn't it?
We're here to have our own experiences for our own growth. And my growth is different from yours and from my neighbor and from my friends.
Yeah.
And so let us all have our experiences, because the truth is we are all connected. We all are energetically connected. So although people will say, you know, we're one, right? We're having individual experiences to bring back to the whole.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully things improve. Like I said in part 1, I really did enjoy your book. I thought it was extremely well written. I read it in a day. I sat down and just, you know, read all the way through. It was really great. If people are interested in your book, if they're interested in your website, if they want to learn more, what should they do?
Well, I believe I sent you a link that is going to be in the description box, and that is
right.
basically all my contact information, the free book that is on my website. So that Linktree link will access everything to the book and meditations and all sorts of yummies there.
Thank you, Lee. I have so enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you. You have a wonderful insight, and you had, of course, an incredible near-death experience, and I just love learning from people like you.
Well, you are delightful, and I thank you for doing the work that you're doing, and it is the work of the light. You are a platform that is allowing people who are, whether they're dipping their toe or they're obsessed, because I know people on both sides.
Right.
And the fact that you, the way that you do your interviews is really beautiful. So thank you. I appreciate you beyond how I can express it.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. And I do it because I love it and I love learning, and I'm a seeker like you are and like so many people that are listening.
Great.
So thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Once again, I so enjoyed my guest. Lee Papa was just such a wonderful person, really great. And I loved hearing from her. I loved her wisdom. People that come back from these experiences, they have such great knowledge about just the love and the acceptance of people. And I loved learning more too about what we had talked about in part 1 and leading into part 2, was just that attraction and what we do in our lives to bring things in. And not everything is brought in because of something we do in this life. And, you know, she did talk about believing some of that is due to reincarnation. And not everybody believes that, but it's just something that she shared. And I love hearing all of these ideas. And then we can decide for ourselves if there are things that we're ready to take in, if we're not ready, if we're not interested, if we're interested. But I love to hear it all, because that's how we learn. And so I really enjoyed that. And then also just her experience with loved ones that are on the other side. And it's so nice to hear how wonderful life is for them and what a great place they are in right now. So I hope that brings comfort to those of you that are missing somebody that you love. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you did enjoy this, please give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't. And I do love to hear your comments. So please share your thoughts on some of the things that she shared. Always, I ask you to be polite about it. If you disagree, that is absolutely fine on my channel. But I just like to ask you to please do it kindly. And then also just some of the things that intrigued you about what she said. I'd love to hear that as well. If you'd prefer just to not comment, but you just want to let me know that you made it this far, as you know, I always appreciate that too. Most of all, I always say this, but it's so true. I do appreciate all of you who are watching my channel and supporting me. It really means a lot to me. So have a great day, everybody, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, If you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to BEYONDwithHeatherTesch to look for more episodes.